Okay, everyone, it is Global News Day, and I'm going to be chatting about it. And I didn't think my voice was as bad as it was before I started recording, but here we are. Anyway, so obviously there are two big things happening in Global this week: the return of Final Fantasy I and a character from the Japanese side that I wasn't. Personally, I bet that this character was not going to show up on Global, but she did end up showing up on Global, so there you go. I was wrong. What can I say? All right, now let's talk about, first of all, Warrior of Light, and then we'll get into the other stuff. Warrior of Light's collaboration comes back and lasts a pretty darn long time. There is no new characters being added to this event. There really isn't even much new at all being added to this event. And so my first recommendation for anybody who is playing the game, you do want to farm out this Sword of Light. It is a really good piece of equipment. There are probably going to be more light heroes in the future that use a sword-based weapon, so I would imagine that this is just going to be a good get for Ramsey users. You know, that's one of the main places that I think this weapon's really good for. It's also good for Warrior of Light. But either way, I think that this weapon should just be farmed by everyone. You should not miss up on this opportunity. That's all that really needs to be said about it. Alright, just put the game on auto or something and get it done. Alright, next up, Warrior of Light. Now, Warrior of Light is coming back to the game. Of course, he was in the game previously, and now he is getting his EX, and it's a pretty darn great... it's a pretty darn good EX. He has his Restore HP one is getting buffed. His Reduce Physical Damage is also getting buffed as well, which is pretty nice. And last but not least, his new ability, which is a damage ability that also grants regen on himself for multiple turns, is generally pretty nice. But overall, the thing to talk about is Warrior of Light becomes a much better tank. And some people may be wondering, how does he compare to some people like Charlotte, a new magic tank, a new thunder-based UR magic tank on the JP side, and, you know, Lord Mont, who's a really good physical tank on the both sides. Well, Warrior of Light is kind of an in-between tank. He kind of does both things really well, and he's just a general easy button for most pieces of content still. I don't think anything's really changed about Warrior of Light. I think that he is a really good unit. If you've already gone in on Lord Mont and you potentially have gone in on Rain, I don't know if you necessarily really need this unless you're building an all-tank team. And I have seen that on the JP side, and it is strong. But regardless, I do think that... you know, if you're going for Charlotte and you already have Lord Mont, or, you know, whichever way you want to look at it, if you're already set for tanks, you don't need to do this. If you're already up to 99, you might as well get him to 120 because he's a good investment. And if you're a new account and you're looking for a good tank and you missed out on Mont, then this is probably the one you want to get. I don't really think that there's too much else to say. Warrior of Light is still really good. I think he's just going to be really good in the future as well for a long time. I think he's a little bit more of a generalized, both physical and magical tank, but I think he can do both pretty well, and I think that he gets some more options into the future, and yeah, he's still really good. I think the JP side spent more on Lord Mont, so when the Warrior of Light came back, I think Warrior of Light is actually one of the worst performing banners on the JP side. Read into that however you will. Okay, let's talk about the other thing that's coming back, Death Machine. And this is one of the things I think you should probably just get, because I think it is still a really good vision card, and he's still a really good summon too. I do believe he, with the event, gets either this week or next week, he gets his 3-star Esper form pretty darn quickly, and he's still a really good tank. Like, yes, there is going to be, you know, there's Phoenix already, and there's Golem too, and both of them are great tank-based summons, but I think this one shouldn't be underestimated. And the effect that you get on this vision card is still really, you know, it's good. You have fire, critical evasion rate up, you have fire attack resistance up. I guess it means more on the JP side because we got a new powerful unit for the fire team. And for global, it feels a little bit up in the air about what you're exactly going to get. So maybe you're a little bit more hesitant about it. But honestly, I think that this is a great vision card to still get, and a great summon that comes with it. So if you got the 10k and you can just drop on it, on the banner, because I assume that it will have a guaranteed banner, just get the summon, get the card. Easy things. I'm sure it'll be a better deal on global than it was on JP. No salt, but I do have a salt shaker in my kitchen. All right, So yeah, I think this is pretty obvious. So to go over the FF1 event, don't expect too much. It's pretty much just a copy pasta from what it was before. Not really any new content whatsoever, but the sword is definitely worth farming. Warrior of Light is worth getting to 120 if you haven't already invested too heavily into other tanks or potentially going too heavily in Charlotte in the future, who is, again, more of a magic tank than anything, but just to know. And, or, you know, Destin and Rain, whatever. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. And in terms of the summon, I still think it is solid and good. Now we're going to come to the last thing to talk about. Salir Sweetheart version. Love just for you. And this is a character that I came out as having major problems with on the JP side. I still do not generally like this at all from the JP version, and I will never apologize for that. It is truly awful, but, and I'm not going to get into it too much into this video, Salir has been changed for the global side to be a much more toned down and much less sexualized than she was on the JP side. Again, not getting into it. So we're just going to talk about the unit as a whole and my appreciation of the unit in terms of the content that I have seen her in, keeping in mind that my account does not have her, and I will just prove that to you in this video right now. So to be fair, for global side, I'm not going to talk about the controversy. I'm not going to talk about how much I absolutely hate this unit for specific reason, for design reasons, anything like that. I'm just going to talk about the unit in terms of what I think about her place in the meta and where I think she will be on the global side. So first of all, Salir, Ice UR unit. Energist is her primary job, secondary job, Time Mage, tertiary job, Black Mage. Now, it should be noted that I think that this unit didn't do that well on the JP side. I've seen her in various pieces of content in terms of difficulty. I haven't seen her too much in raid-based content, either because maybe, you know, more recently there was Ifrit, who she doesn't really work very well against, or just, you know, other pieces of raids have not exactly matched up with her, or more recent content. But to talk about her, she's essentially a mage-based unit. Time Mage obviously allows her to potentially be a more support-based unit. Black Mage, damage, and Energist, obviously damage. And let's just get over, or let's just talk about it. So Bombardment of Love removes all buffs from the target, deals large damage based caster's magic stat, and raises their own CT. Deals damage to targets within range based on caster's magic stat and guaranteed hit. So obviously guaranteed hits are strong, and removing buffs from a unit is very strong too. And so first of all, I just want to talk about her as a Time Mage and what has been more popular on the JP side as a Time Mage. And that's essentially this unit right here, who's slightly behind this picture, Ramir. Ramir was a unit that we essentially got for free. And also I'm noticing that BlueStacks has auto-adjusted its size. Huh, that's interesting. I'm only just noticing that now. Well, we'll just auto-adjust this in the video. It'll be fine. We'll edit it out, right? Anyway, Ramir is a character who has just essentially become very, very popular on the JP side because her first copy was free. You could end up getting a fair amount of shards for her. She was essentially a reduced cost, an incredibly high performance Time Mage, primarily because, first of all, her main job is Time Mage. She gets an EX with Time Mage, meaning that she gets Hastiga, and all of that essentially points to her being way better. But more than that, she also fits into the Dark Element, which I don't need to tell you, is incredibly strong. Now, all of that being said, I think that she is a really good unit and should be more considered if you are really looking for a Time Mage, because again, she is a slightly cheaper option in terms of building. And I do realize that Salir on the global side is not limited from what someone, hold on, let me just double check that. Yeah, shoutouts to Minute Hour for telling me that she's not limited. Which is great. I mean, essentially you can get her at any time, and that's one of the reasons why I don't think she's worth rushing. First of all, there's a better Time Mage option coming in the very near future that you should probably just save up and spend resources on that. Also because a lot of people are tapped out on resources too. So I wouldn't imagine that Salir is that, you know, much of a needs to happen kind of thing. Also talking about Celier's buff removal and whatever, or buff removal and guaranteed hit, there's plenty of guaranteed hit units out there. And in terms of removing all buffs, well, there are options for that. I don't think there are necessarily as good of options, but I'm just not as crazy about that. But one of the real things to talk about is where she actually fits in the meta and why I think that I haven't seen her a ton. First of all, on the JP side, she was a limited time unit, and she was a unit that I don't think was really popular in terms of her design and everything like that amongst the general people, because you just don't see her everywhere. But also she came after a bunch of really high cost banners, really good units, and that always makes it hard for another unit to find their place. Take for example Valric, who is a really great ice-based unit and fits incredibly well with Orin, but just based on banner positions and everything, hasn't really found a great place, and by that I mean almost any place on the JP side. But really, what is to talk about Sweetheart Valier is the fact of where the ice element looks to be going, and also where kind of the fire element is going to. So taking a look at the ice element here, I mean, one of the big things that I've noticed is that it just seems to be trending more towards physical lately. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be physical. Obviously, people are going to be like, well, Umbra, it could change in a day. Well, first of all, for you're on the global side, it's going to be 3 months potentially out. And yes, I do know that global has Frivia, but until Frivia actually gets her EX and it turns out to be really, really good, and I mean insanely good, I wouldn't necessarily go all in on a non-limited time unit that you can potentially get in the future. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second, but really the big thing is, of course, the Laswell card, which is a very big consideration to where the ice element is going into the future, and it does give human killers on physical attacks and not magical attacks, and that's essentially not great for Celier because since she's essentially magical. But you take a look at the next few units and potentially who is also on the docket in the ice element to get an upgrade. I mean, first of all, you have Laswell, physical. You have Barrett coming to the game, who's also physical, and we know that Victoria is also coming to the game, who is a physical based unit. Gilgamesh can end up being a physical based unit. He does have magical abilities as well, more hybrid, but anyway. You have Nasia, you have Valric, and for mages, you essentially don't have that entirely much right now. You have Medina, who is, a much older unit, and definitely feels a little bit more replaced, to be kind at this point. But the new ice card doesn't synergize well, most of the ice element stuff, and people are going to say, again, Frivia. But again, until we see that her EX is actually really good, that's not opposed to recommend EXing and getting up to 120 in an entire character. So I don't think that's worth strong points. But looking into the ice element as a magical base supporting, it's just not quite there, and the vision cards are in a kind of different place. And yes, the ice dragon will come along and support her, but it doesn't necessarily feel enough. Then, of course, you have to talk about her counter element too, which is the fire element. And let's just say that the fire element may not necessarily be the most offensive the most offensive thing. I know, see more comments and so on and so forth, but Global did end up getting Rain way earlier than JP did, and Lord Mont already exists and can be in the future potentially teched against ice-based magic if that really is a problem and really does become popular. I just don't see Celier as having a really good spot. Now, will Celier work well against certain teams? Of course. She'll work very well against, wind-based teams. She'll work very well against physical-based teams that are not necessarily expecting to go up against mages. If you choose the right fight, yes, she'll be good enough. But honestly, I think that she has less of a good place in the global side, and I think that will probably be shown on her global banners. I'm expecting one of the banners that's like, hey, Wales, drop 6,000 paid lapis and get her because we want you to spend money and we're not exactly overtly confident that this character is going to sell a ton. For fans of Celir, of course, get the character, enjoy her, and all of that. But if you want my opinion on whether or not I think she's going to really shake up the global meta, no. And I would expect her to be getting potentially buffs on the Ice Dragon Vision card. But even so, I just don't think there's enough there to recommend this character. And here's my last thing to say about this. I honestly think that if you really want this character, buy low tier packs of Visior, or just save up your Visior. But at the 1.5 anniversary, there is a banner that was on the JP side where you could choose any non-100 cost character, and also I believe it was 160 plus 240, so like somewhere around 480 shards for going all 3 steps, so 6,000 paid lapis. And it could be any character you wanted. You could even divvy it up between multiple characters. But still, if you really want this character, I would really not recommend chasing it. There are much more important banners that you could potentially go in on. Warrior of Light, Warrior of Light Summon, Death Machine, saving up for Final Fantasy VII, saving up for Duan's EX, or maybe even Fryvia's EX. But this is a non-limited time unit and is not going anywhere and is not a priority, and I don't think she's ever going to be really that good in terms of metas and whatnot. But hey, you don't gotta listen to me. But thanks for watching the video. Anyway, that's all for now. Take care. See you next time.